Hello, everyone. Welcome to our online video series, Reading Hope in Trying Times. Our guest today is Guthrie Graves-Fitzsimmons. Guthrie is a fellow with the Faith and Progressive Policy Initiative at American Progress. His work focuses on a wide range of issues related to the role of religion in American public life, including promoting a progressive vision of religious liberty that champions LGBTQ rights and amplifies how faith communities empower social and economic justice. Prior to joining American Progress, Guthrie worked with national faith leaders on two high-profile issue advocacy campaigns. One was opposing the Muslim ban, and the other was passing comprehensive immigration reform. He served as the Associate Director of the Rights and Inclusion Collaborative at Rethink Media, where he worked to promote Muslim, Arab, Sikh, and South Asian rights. He was previously the faith coordinator at the National Immigration Forum, where he helped start the Evangelical Immigration Table. He's the author of the forthcoming book, Just Faith, Reclaiming Progressive Christianity. His writing on religion and politics regularly appears in national media outlets, including CNN and the Washington Post. He's also the founder of The Resistance Prays, a daily devotional aimed at spirituality and politically defeating Trumpism. Guthrie received his undergraduate degree from American University and his MDiv from Union Theological Seminary, where he was the William Sloane Coffin Scholar. He and his husband, both native Texans, now live in Louisville, Kentucky. So Guthrie, it's really great to have you here. Really great to speak with you.
Thanks for having me on, Brian. Glad to be here.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about how the pandemic has impacted you and more generally what some of your thoughts are?
Well, thankfully, both my husband and I are doing fine. Our families are fine, staying healthy at home. We adopted a puppy in early February, so that's been a nice addition to our family here in Louisville. But more broadly, I think the pandemic, and I've been working a lot on the pandemic through my job at the Center for American Progress, has exacerbated a lot of the things we knew about our country, and I focus in my writing on the intersection of politics and religion. And we've seen just everything we knew about politics and religion and the state of our country and the kind of moral decay of the White House has just been like put under a magnifying glass and resulted sadly in so much loss of life that much of which was preventable if we had followed the kind of public health guidelines and sensible common sense reactions that we've seen in parts of Europe and South Korea. But as it pertains to kind of my narrow focus and what I write about, which is religion and politics, we've seen, on the one hand, we've seen faith communities really step up and respond to the crisis by adapting in creative ways, changing how they worship, moving on. We've seen this rapid kind of movement online of a lot of churches that and other houses of worship that have never done that before. Everyone has like become a televangelist. I saw someone say recently overnight. Including my church, Highland Baptist Church here in Louisville, where I'm a deacon. We have been launching our first like Facebook Live worship services, and we had our first deacons meeting over Zoom, which has all been a fascinating experiment. But the Public Religion Research Institute shows that the vast majority of people are following public health guidelines, social distancing, flattening the curve. Meanwhile, we see a small minority of people, the far right kind of conservative Christian movement, not do that, and kind of with the help of the Trump administration, doubt the science, doubt the World Health, or there are, spread conspiracy theories. And then the saddest part is distort religious freedom. I spent a lot of my time thinking about, the role of religious freedom in our society, a foundational element of our country. And you've seen the saddest part, I think, of this kind of politics and religion intersection right now is the idea that it's my religious freedom to meet in person. And it's my religious freedom to not wear a mask in church, or like not right now we're locked in this huge battle that between the Trump administration and the CDC, because the CDC wants to put out guidelines for houses of worship on how they should kind of start to reopen, which we need to do, but do it safely. And the White House doesn't want to put out any guidance about houses of worship because that would infringe on people's religious freedom to practice their faith however they choose. So you see a small minority of kind of far-right Christians get all of the media attention. I mean, everyone's heard about these churches that continue to meet, and there were pastors that were arrested for standing up for their right to meet. But the reality is they're a very small minority when you actually, poll the general population. Most churches and most houses of worship are actually trying to model good leadership right now. And it's sad to me that that kind of narrative about the far right distorts our kind of public narrative about what Christians are doing right now. And so what I've been focused on in my writing is to amplify what the positive things people are doing, how houses of worship are closed, are suspending in-person worship, the creative things people are doing, and then also confronting the kind of far-right narrative and how they are, distorting religious freedom to spread the virus. So those are some introductory thoughts on what I feel like is going on right now in what I'm looking at.
I mean, we've always lived in some degree of a crazy world. And then after the 2016 election, it became incredibly crazier. Mm-hmm. And now with the pandemic, it's reached another absurd level of craziness too, I think. And as you said, unfortunately, we've seen it bring out the positive aspects of many people, but we've seen it bring out the really negative aspects of our country and many people as well, which is really obviously sad to see.
And also our doubting of information sources has been exacerbated, that people don't trust the media, whatever that means. They don't trust a lot of mainstream news sources because they've been told over and over again. People have been primed to not believe the media because it's somehow biased. And then at the same time, though, faith leaders have a special responsibility right now to communicate, to find out what's really going on, to communicate, what the CDC is saying, helping members, because people do trust their clergy. And in the void of political leadership right now, it's more incumbent on faith leaders to rise to the occasion and be the leaders we need.
I totally agree. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad you're helping do that. So one of the things we've been talking about in this whole series is basically how God has helped us through challenging times in the past, and how we can draw on that now. So would you have any thoughts you'd like to share on that?
Yeah, I think what I've seen kind of how God has helped me personally during this time is to see how, well, each day my one kind of source of hope in my day is going for a walk. That's like my one thing I get to do every day that's kind of brings me joy and hope in these times. And I love the choreography and the kind of dance that we do when we come, when you're walking down the sidewalk and you see someone coming the other direction, you kind of part and like one person will walk way away. I keep way more than 6 feet away from people. I want to keep 30 feet away. And it's strange because we're acting in solidarity with each other. We're loving each other by staying apart. But you can actually see that physically expressed. You can see the physical kind of manifestation of loving each other by going the opposite direction or by leaving all this space. And when I go, I've been taking these really long walks to kind of clear my head and find some peace. So I'm not just at home all day. And on these 8-mile walks where we go through our big park here in Louisville, it takes like sometimes there'll be people going in multiple directions, and it takes this whole effort for us not to come in contact. And I do think that's loving your neighbor, and that's how I see God expressed in people caring for each other, in people realizing that the point of wearing a mask is not necessarily to protect yourself, but protect your neighbor from spreading the virus to your neighbor. And I think about in the Gospels, we read about the road to Emmaus, and we read about the people not recognizing Jesus initially, the resurrected Jesus on the road to Emmaus. And that was a story right around Easter that I was thinking about when I was walking around, is that where do we not see people, not see God, not see people caring for each other? But right now, we have this really present example in front of us of how we love each other during this time by staying apart.
Well, it is always wonderful to see when, the Spirit works through people in a positive way, right? And, to be able to see Jesus' Spirit reenacted through people that are doing the right things is a great observation and a great thing to see.
Mm-hmm. And then we have Pentecost coming up, and we were talking recently, like our church is going to want to prematurely open for Pentecost. And Pentecost seems like the worst time. We're celebrating the outpouring of the Holy Spirit. We're celebrating that this mission that Jesus gave his followers is now theirs to carry on. And that's our mission right now, is to do just as Jesus taught his first disciples. And so Pentecost seems like the perfect time to continue to not rush to reopen, to continue to love one another. And then I also, the hardest thing I think I went through in my life, I've had a privileged life of growing up with financial resources and not having to face a lot of burdens, but was coming out was definitely the thing that I struggled with all of my youth, and then not coming out until college. And having the support of my pastor growing up in my kind of liberal Methodist church, which I feel like was a very lucky thing that not very many queer Christians get to experience.
Yes, you're in the right place.
And then praying with my college chaplain for the courage to come out. We had this 11 p.m. Service in college at American University Methodist School, where you could come down and pray. And I was always up. You're in college, you're up at that hour, and I prayed for the courage, and the pastor prayed with me. And then being a part of churches that would ordain me as a deacon, and having that support from that pastoral support, I feel like it has always been an expression of God's love. And those pastors loved me when I couldn't love myself as a gay person. And they modeled the love that God was showing me through them. And so having this strange love expressed now in the pandemic from our pastors over Zoom. And my church is in the middle of an interim season, so we don't even have a senior pastor, so there's all these other complications. But our pastors have continued to minister to us and meet in small groups, and everything through Zoom has also been a source of great comfort to me. That is something similar to what I've to the love that God greeted me with through pastors in kind of my darkest hours in life.
Excellent. Well, you really were lucky, to have been, at a church that was so supportive, and so helpful for you. That the further back you go back in time, I think the more rare that was.
Yeah, I feel like it was still pretty rare in like mid 2000s Texas for that to happen. But I could see things starting to change, which also gave me hope that, like the broader church would continue to evolve.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what kind of resources, books, articles, spiritual practices, other things would you recommend that would help people through this time now?
if I may recommend one of a resource that I create but curate with a large group of people, it's called The Resistance Praise. It's a daily devotional that we started in July of 2017. We have about 80 writers that contribute each day, 7 days a week. We've published now over 1,000 editions of it. And it's every day there's a news article about something that's going on in our world, a scripture passage, a short reflection, an action that we encourage people to take, and then a prayer that about our 5,000 readers are all kind of praying together that day. And for the past it's hard to keep track of time right now, but however many days it's now been since this pandemic really started, we've been obviously focused very intensely on providing spiritual resources for people during this time, just self-care. But then also there is a need for activism right now. And since that's my vocation is supporting faith-based activists, right now there are a lot of opportunities. We often share petitions from another group called Faithful America that I work with, which is an online petition site for progressive Christians. And we've been doing a lot of different petitions around the pandemic. So yeah, I'd recommend The Resistance Praise. I've also been reading a great book that's been a great source to me. I'll use it up as a prop, American Prophets by religion news reporter Jack Jenkins. He details about the past 15 years of faith-based activism, which was the kind of faith-based activism that I saw when I was growing up. Some of the things that Jack mentions in the book actually that made me kind of go down this path of what I wanted to do with my life at the intersection of faith and politics. And then he has a lot of recent examples from just the past few years under the Trump administration, how we see more and more progressive Christians vocally organizing and becoming activists because of our faith. And it's hard. I also want to promote authors right now that are putting out books in the midst of this pandemic, which I can't imagine is easy. So get a copy of Jack's book. It's a great book. And just knowing so many other people are across this country are taking action because of their faith inspires me to kind of keep going right now.
Excellent. All wonderful advice. And I will put links to those resources in the YouTube description for the video that we have, and so people will be able to find it.
Wonderful.
Well, Guthrie, I really appreciate you spending some time with us. It's really great to meet you and really great to see all the great work that you're doing. And thank you for that. And thank you for being with us here.
Thanks for having me on.